Freddie Mercury is in the middle of recording Bohemian Rhapsody when the studio's lead sound engineer stops the tape and says, "That's not real singing." What Freddie does in the next 4 seconds doesn't just prove him wrong. It changes the sound engineer's entire understanding of what the human voice can do. London, England, August 1975. Trident Studios on St. Anne's Court in Soho. It's 2:47 in the morning. Most of London is asleep, but inside Studio 2, Queen has been working for 19 hours straight. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of cold coffee. Empty takeaway containers are piled in the corner. The carpet is worn thin from years of musicians pacing back and forth, waiting for their moment of genius. Freddie Mercury stands in the vocal booth, wearing a silk kimono over his clothes, because the studio is freezing at this hour. His hair is disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He's been singing for 6 hours straight, layering vocal track after vocal track for what will become one of the most complex vocal arrangements in rock history. The song is Bohemian Rhapsody. Nobody has ever attempted anything like this before. Not in rock and roll. Not anywhere. Freddie has written a 6-minute operatic rock epic that requires dozens of vocal overdubs, creating a choir sound from just 4 voices: Freddie, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon, but mostly Freddie. In the control room, producer Roy Thomas Baker sits at the massive mixing console, surrounded by the band members. They're exhausted but excited. They can hear something special happening, something nobody has done before, but there's someone else in the control room. Gary Mitchell, the studio's senior sound engineer, 52 years old, been working in recording studios for 30 years. Started as a tape operator in 1945, worked his way up through the ranks. Engineered sessions for everyone from classical orchestras to jazz legends to rock bands. He's seen it all, heard it all, recorded it all. Gary Mitchell believes in traditional recording techniques, proper microphone placement, proper vocal technique, proper everything. And what he's watching Freddie Mercury do in that vocal booth is, in his professional opinion, completely improper. Freddie is doing something Gary has never seen before. He's not just singing the notes, he's creating textures with his voice, switching between chest voice and head voice in ways that shouldn't be possible, adding vibrato in unconventional places, sustaining notes that seem to defy human lung capacity, creating harmonies that sound like different people, but it's all him. For the operatic section that Galileo part Freddie is recording layer after layer of vocals, each one slightly different in tone and attack, building this massive wall of sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Gary watches through the control room glass as Freddie prepares for another take. Freddie closes his eyes, takes a breath, and launches into the vocal. His voice soars, dips, twists, turns. He's not reading sheet music. He's not following conventional vocal training. He's just doing it, creating sounds that Gary's engineering textbooks never mentioned. After the take, Freddie's voice comes through the talkback microphone. "How was that, darling?" Roy Thomas Baker is about to respond when Gary Mitchell reaches over and presses the button himself. His voice cuts into the headphones Freddie is wearing. "Mr. Mercury, we need to talk about your technique." Everyone in the control room goes quiet. Brian May looks up from his guitar. Roger Taylor stops spinning his drumstick. John Deacon raises an eyebrow. Roy Thomas Baker's hand freezes over the mixing console. Freddie's voice comes back, slightly amused. "Oh, what about it?" Gary Mitchell doesn't notice the warning looks from the other band members. He continues, speaking with the authority of someone who has 30 years of professional experience behind him. "What you're doing in there, that's not real singing. Real singing requires proper breath support, proper vocal placement, proper technique. What you're doing is forcing your voice into positions it's not meant to go. You're switching registers incorrectly. You're adding vibrato in the wrong places. Frankly, you're going to damage your vocal cords if you keep this up." The control room is dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Freddie Mercury stands in the vocal booth, still wearing his silk kimono, looking through the glass at this sound engineer who just told him he doesn't know how to sing. Freddie's face is completely neutral. No anger, no defensiveness. Just listening. "Go on," Freddie says quietly. Gary Mitchell, encouraged by what he thinks is Freddie's willingness to learn, continues. "I've engineered sessions for some of the greatest vocalists in the world. Opera singers, jazz vocalists, trained professionals. They all follow the same fundamental principles: diaphragmatic breathing, consistent tone production, controlled vibrato. What you're doing breaks every rule in the book. Every rule. Freddie repeats. Every single one, Gary confirms. Now, I understand you're a rock singer, and rock doesn't require the same technical precision as classical music or jazz. But if you want this track to sound professional, you need to sing it properly. Use your head voice for the high notes, chest voice for the low notes, and don't try to blend them. Pick one register and stay in it. That's how real singers do it. Brian May tries to interrupt. Gary, I don't think. But Freddie holds up his hand, visible through the glass. He wants to hear this. He wants to understand exactly what this engineer thinks about his voice. Gary continues, now fully committed to his critique. And those harmonies you're creating there too complex. The human ear can only process so many layers before it becomes noise. You're overdubbing too many vocal tracks. It's going to sound muddy, unprofessional. If you want a choir sound, hire a real choir. Don't try to fake it with multitracking. Fake it, Freddie says softly. I'm not trying to be harsh, Mr. Mercury. I'm trying to help you. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what works and what doesn't. And what you're attempting here, it won't work. It can't work. You're not trained for this kind of singing. You don't have the technical foundation. You need to simplify. Sing it straight. Follow the rules. That's how you make a record that will actually sell. Freddie Mercury takes off his headphones, sets them on the music stand, walks out of the vocal booth. The silk kimono flows behind him as he walks through the studio, past the drum kit, past the piano, through the heavy soundproof door, and into the control room. Gary Mitchell suddenly realizes that maybe he's made a mistake. The look on Brian May's face confirms it. Roger Taylor is shaking his head. John Deacon has gone back to reading a magazine, but there's a slight smile on his face. Freddie walks up to the mixing console, stands next to Gary Mitchell, looks at him with those dark, intelligent eyes, and speaks very quietly, very calmly. Gary, is it? Yes, Mr. Mercury. Gary, how long have you been an engineer? 30 years. 30 years. That's impressive. You've worked with opera singers, yes, many, and they all sing the same way, following the same rules, the fundamental technique, yes, and they all sound the same. Gary hesitates. They all sound ... professional. But do they sound the same? Similar, yes. There's a reason for that. Proper technique produces a consistent, quality sound. Freddie nods slowly. I see, and you think I should sound like them. I think you should use proper technique like them. Gary, Freddie says, very gently, would you do me a favor? Of course. Would you please rewind the tape to the beginning of the operatic section, the part we just recorded? I want you to listen to something. Gary Mitchell, confused but compliant, rewinds the 2-inch tape. The giant reels spin backward with a worry sound. He stops at the beginning of the Galileo section. Now, Freddie says, I want you to close your eyes and listen. Don't think about technique. Don't think about rules. Don't think about your 30 years of experience. Just listen to what the voice is doing, what it's creating, what it's expressing. Roy Thomas Baker presses play. The tape begins to roll. Through the studio monitors, the operatic section of Bohemian Rhapsody plays, layer upon layer of Freddie's voice, building this impossible cathedral of sound. Galileo, 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 Figaro, Magnifico. It's not like anything Gary Mitchell has ever heard in 30 years of recording. It's not opera, it's not rock, it's not jazz. It's something entirely new. Freddie's voice splits into multiple personalities, each one distinct, each one perfect, each one expressing a different emotion, a different character, a different shade of meaning. The voices interweave, harmonize, clash, resolve. They create tension and release. They tell a story without words, just through the sound itself, the tone, the texture, the feeling. Gary Mitchell listens, really listens, and for the first time, he hears it, not as an engineer analyzing technique, but as a human being experiencing art. When the section ends, there's silence in the control room. Freddie speaks softly. Gary, you're right. I'm not using proper technique. I never learned it. Nobody taught me the rules. I taught myself to sing by listening to opera records, gospel music, rock and roll, whatever moved me. I don't know what register I'm supposed to use. I just use whatever sound I hear in my head. He pauses. You said I'm faking a choir with multitracking. You're right, I am. But I'm not trying to sound like a real choir. I'm trying to sound like something that doesn't exist, something nobody has heard before. Gary Mitchell opens his mouth to speak, but Freddie isn't done. You said what I'm doing won't work, that it can't work. Gary, in 4 seconds, from the moment you stopped talking to the moment you pressed play, You heard exactly why you're wrong. Freddie walks to the coffee pot in the corner, pours himself a cup, takes a sip, grimaces because it's cold, sets it down, turns back to face Gary. I respect your experience. 30 years, that's a lifetime in this business. You've worked with incredible artists. You know things I'll never know about recording, about engineering, about how sound works. But, Freddie continues, his voice still gentle but firm, you've also developed limitations. You've learned so many rules that you've forgotten why we make music in the first place. Not to follow rules, to break them, to create something that makes people feel. He gestures toward the speakers. That section we just heard. It makes people feel something they've never felt before, because it's something they've never heard before. And they've never heard it before because everyone else is following the rules you just told me I should follow. Gary Mitchell's face is flushed. He's not angry. He's embarrassed, ashamed, because Freddie is right, and Gary knows it. I'm sorry, Gary says quietly. I was out of line. No, Freddie says, you were doing your job. You were trying to help me make a better record, and I appreciate that. I genuinely do. Freddie sits on the arm of the studio couch, crosses his legs. But here's what I need you to understand. When you told me I'm not a real singer because I don't follow proper technique, you're measuring me against the wrong standard. I'm not trying to be a real singer by your definition. I'm trying to be the only singer who sounds like me. He continues, every opera singer you've worked with sounds similar because they're all trying to achieve the same ideal, the perfect technique, the perfect tone. And that's beautiful. That has value. But it's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is finding every possible sound my voice can make and using all of them. High notes, low notes, chest voice, head voice, mixing them together in ways I'm not supposed to, adding vibrato where it shouldn't be, sustaining notes longer than is comfortable, because the song needs it, because the emotion needs it, because the art needs it. Roger Taylor speaks up from his corner of the room. Gary, mate, just so you know, Freddie's got a 4-octave range. Most singers have 2, maybe 2.5. Freddie's voice can do things that literally no other human voice can do. That's not despite his lack of formal training. That's because of it. He never learned what was impossible, so he just does it. Brian May adds, we've been working on this song for 3 weeks. Nobody thought it could be done. Nobody thought you could create an operatic rock song. Nobody thought 4 guys could sound like a 100-person choir. But Freddie made us believe it was possible. And now we're doing it. John Deacon, still reading his magazine, says without looking up, also, he's been singing for 6 hours straight, and his voice still sounds perfect. Try doing that with proper technique. Freddie smiles at his bandmates, then turns back to Gary. I'm going to go back in that booth now. I'm going to sing this section again, exactly the way I was singing it before, using all my improper technique, breaking all your rules. And you're going to engineer it the way Roy wants it engineered. And together, we're going to make something that nobody has ever heard before. Something that will still be playing on radios 50 years from now. Not because it follows the rules, because it breaks them beautifully. Freddie stands up, adjusts his kimono, and heads for the door. Then he stops, turns back. Oh, and Gary, 4 seconds. That's how long it took you to realize you were wrong. From the moment the music started playing to the moment you understood what I'm actually doing. 4 seconds to go from that's not real singing to oh my God, what is this? He smiles. Imagine what the rest of the world will feel when they hear it for the first time. Freddie Mercury walks back into the vocal booth, puts on his headphones, looks through the glass at Gary Mitchell, who is still standing at the mixing console, looking like someone just rewired his entire understanding of music. Roy Thomas Baker says to Gary, very quietly, I tried to warn you. Gary Mitchell nods slowly. He's extraordinary, isn't he? That's why we let him do whatever he wants, Roy says. Because nobody else can do what he does. The session continues. Gary Mitchell engineers the rest of the vocal recording with newfound respect and wonder. Every time Freddie does something that shouldn't work, a register shift in the middle of a word, a vibrato that comes out of nowhere, a sustained note that seems to last forever, Gary stops questioning and starts marveling. At 6:30 in the morning, they finish the vocal recording for Bohemian Rhapsody. Freddie has sung over 180 separate vocal parts. They've used so many overdubs that they've worn through the tape in some places and had to transfer everything to a new reel. When they play back the completed operatic section, nobody speaks. They just listen to this impossible thing they've created. This wall of sound that shouldn't exist but does. This choir that's really one man's voice multiplied and harmonized and layered. into something that sounds like heaven and hell and earth all at once. Gary Mitchell is crying, actual tears running down his face, because in 30 years of recording music, he's never heard anything like this. He's engineered opera singers and jazz legends and rock stars, but he's never heard a single voice do what Freddie Mercury's voice just did. After the playback ends, Gary turns to Freddie and says, "I need to apologize." "You already did," Freddie says. "No, I need to apologize properly. What I said to you about not being a real singer, that was the stupidest thing I've ever said in my entire career. You're not just a real singer. I don't even have words for what you are." Freddie walks over, puts his hand on Gary's shoulder. "You were protecting what you know. That's not stupid. That's human. But now you know something new, something that wasn't in your textbooks. That the human voice can do more than we think it can if we stop limiting it with rules." 3 months later, Bohemian Rhapsody is released. It becomes the most successful single in Queen's history. It stays at #1 in the UK for 9 weeks. It changes rock music forever. It proves that you can write a 6-minute opera rock epic with no chorus and people will love it. It proves that one voice can sound like a choir if that voice belongs to Freddie Mercury. Gary Mitchell continues working as an engineer for another 20 years, but he changes how he works. When young singers come in trying to follow all the rules, he tells them about the night Freddie Mercury taught him that the best music happens when you break the rules beautifully. The story of that recording session becomes legendary in the studio world. Engineers tell it to each other in hushed tones. The night someone told Freddie Mercury he couldn't sing, the 4 seconds that changed everything. The moment when 30 years of experience met 4 octaves of genius and learned humility. Years later, in an interview just before he died, Freddie Mercury was asked about his vocal technique. The interviewer mentioned that classical voice teachers often cite him as an example of what not to do. Freddie laughed. "Darling, if doing it wrong sounds this good, then I never want to do it right. If this story of breaking rules to create art moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that being different isn't wrong, it's just different. And sometimes different is exactly what the world needs to hear."